Disclaimer, this review contains spoilers for the game's story. I ask that this review isn't taken too seriously, for I am simply criticizing the game from my own perspective only. All credit goes to the creators of the game, so enjoy, and thanks for watching. RWBY Grimm Eclipse Review by Wolfdog107. RWBY Grimm Eclipse is a hack and slash game that I am reviewing, yes. This is my actual official review, not just a stream where I talk about the game's flaws and pros and cons and whatnot. This is the actual review. So, RWBY Grimm Eclipse is obviously a hack and slash game where you go through various different story mode levels there's only 10, and they're not too different from each other. They all feel the same, besides from a few different objectives and whatnot, but I'll get that part later. But it features many different RWBY characters. Well, not many, I should say, just like 8 that are actually playable, and then a few others that are just there for voice acting and story. And off the bat, in the main menu, pretty simple. It's kind of boring main menu, to be honest. You're just given a random options in multiplayer, single player, and whatnot. And there's also a rank system, which is like a prestige system in Call of Duty, and it does take away basically your character level experience, but it boosts like what prestige you have, stuff like that, which I'll get into later. The multiplayer, at first, like when you boot up the game and you want to just go straight into multiplayer, you won't be able to, because it'll just take too long to load if you just click on it right away. What you're gonna have to do first is go straight into single player, because what happens is if you go straight into multiplayer and then decide, okay, it's gonna take way too long now, I have the time for this, and then you switch to single player, yes, it's not gonna work, because, well, it's a glitch that I have. Not sure if anyone else has, but where if you exit on multiplayer after trying to get it to load for like 15 minutes or so, then going to single player will not work, because for some reason it just doesn't. And the game will say that you're clicking on it by playing the sound effect for it, but it doesn't work. Neither does opening up any of the other menus work. So here we are with the beginning of the review. The other clip, it was just something to let you guys know about first, but yeah, so here I'm going to be discussing the intro, story, characters, and content. First of all, my name is Wolfdog107, and this is my review of RWBY Grimm Eclipse. So I'm re-recording this because I felt everything else was taking up a little too much time, so I decided to narrow down the amount of time that the video takes a little bit. So yeah, here we go. With RWBY Grimm Eclipse, there's a story mode, 8 different characters to play as, and there's also a horde mode and survival mode. Each story mode, or story mode in general, has 10 levels, and all the modes in the game have 4 difficulties: normal, hard, legendary, and eclipse. And then there's also a skill tree system in the game, but it's not really that good. First of all, you got different skills that you have to complete challenge requirements for, which take forever. There's the first 2, which are the ones for getting a special skill for your ultimate move, and then your team attack. Those ones you can do in no time. But the rest of them, for your range skills and your general skills, those challenges take a long time to unlock the actual skill and then to buy it. So yeah, the skill system could have used a lot more work and could have taken less time to take care of. And plus, you only get 10 skill points, generally speaking. Once you get a character up to level 10, all you get is 10 skill points. You don't get any more than that, sadly. And there could have been a level cap of 20 or 25, but they didn't do that, and I feel like that would have added more replay value to the game and made it a lot more fun. And you would have been able to get more skills. But there are some skills that you can't get once you get one before it, or like basically, as you saw in the skill tree menu, the layout showed where you can get one skill tree versus the other, or one skill versus the other, and basically if you choose the skill on the left side of the skill tree, within that same tree of the skills, then you'll just get one skill versus the other, basically. And it does eliminate that kind of element of being able to get really cool moves, but at the same time you don't really have to worry about it, because you can still level up and then go back to it and get it later on, because you can thankfully refund your skill points in this game. So thankfully they put that feature in there in order to make sure that the player base is happy that they can at least go back to those other skills that they haven't tried yet, but they have just unlocked at level 10 or whatever, and then they can actually refund their skill points and get those same skills that they want, as well as the ones that they haven't gotten yet. But keep in mind, you only have 10 skill points, meaning you can't get all of the skills in the game. And I feel like there is maybe a little too many skills, but at the same time, if they want to keep this amount of skills in the game, they could have put a level cap of 25 at most. No, I'd say a level cap of 30 at most, actually. And then I would have been fine with having 30 skill points and how many skills that they have, or 25 skill points and a level cap of 25. Either way, it would have worked out a lot more, and you wouldn't have to worry about the skills. Now onto the story. We've got the characters of Team RWBY and the characters of Team Juniper. Team RWBY and Team Juniper are sent out on a mission to find this security node and figure out what the source behind it is. And then, as you're progressing through some of the levels, you'll notice early on that, when the Professor Port will say early on that the security nodes are related to an old industries company called Merlot Industries. And there's supposed to be a company that's now coming back after being abandoned for a long time, and they're trying to basically mutate Grimm and make them even stronger and more dangerous. And it's up to Team RWBY and Juniper to put a stop to them. That's basically the story right there. It wasn't really interesting, there wasn't enough to go on. Let alone you only get to play 10 levels, which you could have just finished it even quicker by just playing 5 levels, and you wouldn't even care. They could have just had 5 story levels, which I appreciate that they did add 10. But in between the actual levels that were needed for the story, most of the levels felt like filler episodes for just random dialogue to occur, and I felt like that didn't really need to happen. They just had too many filler spots for the story, and let alone the story in general was uninteresting, not really inspired. It was just plain, simple, get it done, bam, no reward, just beat the game. That's all. And yeah, and the story dialogue was also uninteresting, as well as the character dialogue. Both of those different dialogue systems were very poor. They weren't really interesting, but I did like the graphics in this game. They look nice, as well as the visuals. They look really cool. They make you feel like you're actually playing as these characters, rather than just stupid run-of-the-mill type stuff that you can find on Craigslist or some shit. But yeah, so the gameplay rather is pretty cool, and you get different types of attacks. You got your ultimates, which are basically your special move, which you only get one type of ultimate for each character. So yeah, and then you got your triangle button, which is your strong attacks, and then square, which is your light attacks. But here's where a problem comes in. There's also the counter button, but that's not where it comes into play yet. The combo system could have been a little more improved on in terms of how much you could go with it, or how long you could go on with it. I feel like that the combo system could have been worked on a little bit more, because when you're doing a combo of a bunch of squares, like let's say 3 squares, and then you press a triangle, you can't just immediately go back to pressing square again. It won't work out that way. There's no combos like that in the game where you can keep pressing one button over and over like 3 times, and then going to another button, and then going back to the old button, and continuing the combo that way, so you can get more interesting looking hits, and also deal more damage on the enemies. It doesn't turn out that way. In fact, all you can do is just press square as many times as you can, up to 5, and then, or no, up to 4. If you do it up to 5, you'll just do a whole square combo. If you do it under 5, basically square 2 times or square 1 time or whatever, under 5, and then you press triangle button, and then you'll get a combo, like a more interesting combo. But you can't then turn the triangle back into a square and then go back to a triangle. Basically, you can't traverse between buttons. So I felt like they could have done that, but they didn't, so I'm a little bit disappointed with that. Now, as for the counter system, here I'm playing on Eclipse difficulty, and what all the difficulties do is add more enemies. They don't change the amount of damage that enemies do, or the amount of health that enemies have. And here's where the counter system comes into play. Basically, let's say here I am on Eclipse difficulty and I have like tons of enemies on me, and I want to do a counter, but a lot of them just do a counter all at once, so like maybe some of them, and then I'm trying to keep track of that, but then I keep getting hit over and over, and then I'm barely given an opportunity to even go in and hit one of them or do a counter. And the counter pop-ups last only like 0.5 milliseconds, making it really difficult to even spot them sometimes, and even difficult to just at least land them. And it just makes the counter system feel useless. But when you do land a counter, you do stun the enemy at least. So I can thankfully say that there is a stun mechanic in this hack and slash game, or at least what it attempts to be. But yeah, I feel like the mechanics could have been a little bit more worked on in terms of the counter system. And there's 2 different kinds of the counter system. There's a regular counter system where you can counter the enemy, but then there's one where you're not able to, where the counter icon will not have the circle button, and the yellow color will be replaced with the red color, just without the circle button popping up above their head. And those attacks are going to be dodgeable, but they won't be counterable. You can't counter them. You can only basically counter them by dodging. You can't like attack them and then it will stop. You literally can only dodge, unless you get like an ice turret that can just land some ice attacks on them and then freeze them, or you're playing as Weiss who can freeze them, then okay, maybe that will work. But some enemies, when they use their non-counterable attack, they will burrow on the ground, and that goes for the smaller types of enemies. Some enemies will start like dashing towards you, doing a bunch of swipes and all that, and then others will just make a bunch of pillar of rocks and narrow down towards you in one straight line. Those are some pretty cool attacks if you think about it. But think again, those are the only types of that's the only amount of ultimate attacks you can do in this game. Not just for the playable characters, but for the enemies as well. Each life form in this game can only do one ultimate attack, which is disappointing. And the counter system can get really annoying at times and frustrating at times, making you just not even want to counter in the first place, which I often find myself not wanting to do. I sometimes do the counters, but not anymore. I just barely even tend to do it. But yeah, the counter system could have been worked on a lot more, as well as the story and the characters and their dialogue as well. But you do also get team attacks in this game for the combat, which are pretty cool. But again, there's only one type, so yeah. And you can trigger them randomly, which there's no actual combo to actually trigger a team attack. And then just like there's no way just one set combo will basically start up a team attack pop up, and then you can go in for a team attack. Any combo that you can do could potentially start up a team attack, leading for you to go in and start the team attack. And yeah, but in terms of content now, as I've already talked about story and characters, the content, basically just 10 missions in this story. There's pretty much 5 horde maps, both for the horde mode, which is a wave mode where you get a set of waves and then you finish them and that's it. And then there's also the survival mode, which I'll get to a bit later, which I feel like needs to be talked about maybe a little bit more than the horde mode. Maybe not, whatever, but yeah. So the story, characters, and content overall, I think it is a pretty small amount of what you're getting. Characters are uninteresting, and 4 of them being Dr. Merlot, Professor Port, Dr. Ublek, and Professor Ozpin being the only 4 characters in the game that are only given dialogue and voice acting, but no actually playable models. They're not playable characters. They're just there to keep the story going. And I feel like the game suffers from that a lot. And yeah, obviously the graphics do look very nice, and as you can see, you can refund your skill points in this game. So thankfully you can do that if you finally complete a challenge for one of the skills that you want to get. Then you can refund your skill points once you finish the level, or reselect a character if you're going back to play another match or whatever. Basically that. But yeah. There's also the rank system, which is basically another piece of content I want to get into. It's basically where it's your player rank, like Prestige in Call of Duty. Except in this game, you don't really lose anything except the cost of your own time of having to complete the challenges for the skills for the skill tree. Yes, you heard me right. You have to redo the grind for completing each and every single challenge that you want to do for each and every skill in the skill tree for each character that you want to work on them for. Every time you do the player rank, aka the prestige in this game, every time you do a rank up, you'll have to redo that process all over again. I'm trying to do that because I want to get the platinum for this game. Don't judge me. No matter how bad it is, I want to get the platinum. Just for sake of fucking having it. Because I'm a big fan of this show. Of this series in general. But yeah. Let's move on to the next section. Level design. So, I do think that the levels are pretty cool. But before I get to that, generally speaking, for this map, not generally speaking, but basically, for this map's level design, I like it. I also see that there is a useless element, such as the split of the doors there at the middle, or at the beginning of the map. And you know why? Because later here in this section, I'll be finishing off these enemies, and then going through the other part of the map. But then there's going to be another combat zone, which is basically on the other side of this combat zone that I'm currently in right here in this clip. And in that combat zone, there's one direction to the left, and then there's going to be a direction going straight. And if you take the straight path, you'll continue towards the right side of the beginning of the map, the door that's on the right. And you can go to that side and see what you missed out on over there and collect an artifact in that spot. So I feel that split in the beginning of the map was a little bit endless, because you can get to that side easily. You just have to jump onto a wall. Well, it's not much of a wall, it's more like a platform kind of wall, because there's like a piece of the map that's jumpable on. Like, you can easily mount onto that part of the map and then get onto that other side. You can do the same thing from right to left. Basically, both of these two different combat zones I'm talking about, that transition in between the two different sides of the map, are basically what causes the ability to split the map from the beginning to be useless. It's basically why they're useless, why it's a useless function for this map's level design. And I think that it could have been worked on and made it where the players couldn't traverse back to the other side like that. But at the same time, I get why they did it. Maybe they just want players to actually get all the artifacts for all the levels. And so in terms of that, I will allow it, but at the same time, if you're just trying to run through, you might notice that you can do that and it may seem like a flaw. But I don't think it's too bad, but it could have been a little bit different. I don't know. But now back to the general level design. It's pretty cool. The maps do feel like they're there, and that they're full enough to be really cool looking, and that they actually have map elements that they would have just like in the show and the manga. And I feel like the map design is pretty good, or level design. You got like the different trees and leaves. Those are the basic stuff, the basic things that are in the game. For in terms of maps, the grass and the trees. You also get like rocks, small pillars. Get different plants, butterflies, stuff like that. So it does feel like a pretty nice environment, although there are some sections where it may feel a little empty, but not too much. But here is where I find one artifact, and then you're going to see me go to the transition spot right here. I'm going to take a left instead of a right back to where I came from. Instead, I'm going to go towards where I came from, but in the other direction, by going straight in this section right here. And as you can see, I could have gone left, but that would have just continued through the level. But here, as you can see, I got onto this side of the map, the right side of the map, by just going on that rock part of the wall right there that I was on, and I just easily got over here. But I think it is just there in terms of backtracking, so I do think it's pretty good, but it does feel a little bit useless because all you're getting is a collectible. They're not really worth much in this game at all. All they do is give you XP and that's it. Just 100 XP. And if you're a level 9 and they only give you 100 XP, it's pretty useless because you need 3,000 or something XP once you're level 9 to get to level 10. Now, here we are with the online mode. The online mode was fairly good. I didn't really have any problems with it. I do think that in terms of the game going online mode nowadays, there was rarely any servers or lobbies open on anymore. There's barely anyone playing the game online now. I'm not sure if anyone still plays the game at all, besides the ones I know in my own Grimm Eclipse Hangout community on PS4. or PSN, but yeah, they could have had a bigger amount of content in online mode, and what you get in online mode is not just being able to do the story cooperatively, but you can also do the horde mode and survival mode in online. And to get to online mode, you just gotta go to multiplayer. But yeah, online mode could have had stuff like a PvE mode. If players want to go against each other, they could have done something like that, like an arena duel mode. But now let's get to survival mode and the final verdict. So yeah, survival mode is basically just that, survival mode, just facing an endless amount of waves with up to basically 4 players in one lobby playing with each other against randomly generated AI enemies. But they have different kinds of enemies for like each wave. Basically for wave 1 and 2 you get small types of enemies, as well as wave 3. Wave 4 and higher, there's gonna be like other enemies, like other types of enemies that will do different attacks. But generally speaking, all the enemies do the same types of attacks, just in their own different ways. And there's also a Scorpion Grimm in the game, which barely even shows up in the story mode. And hold on 1 second. Yeah, so survival mode, you have the Scorpion enemies, or the Scorpion Grimm, which they don't really show up in the story mode too much. They only show up like 2 or 3 times, like just one mission, another mission, and then one more mission, and that's it of seeing them. I wish the Scorpion Grimm had a little more appearance in the game. Basically, the Scorpion enemies, or the Scorpion Grimm, do show up, but rarely in the story mode. In the other modes, they show up a lot more. And in both the horde mode and survival mode, you can get turrets. And in horde mode, you also have to protect security nodes. But in survival mode, you can just get turrets and basically survive until whichever wave you lose. And there's also a revival mechanics which work just fine, but there's a skill to revive players a lot quicker, which makes sense, but at the same time I don't think there was a need. But yeah, survival mode was pretty fun, but it was one of the most that they added in the 3rd update for the game, in terms of when the consoles first got the game. PC has had it longer than the consoles, so keep that in mind. But yeah, and there is DLC packs for this game, as you might have noticed. There's also taunts, but only 1 taunt for each character. And there's a level cap of 10. I've already mentioned the rank. We just talked about the survival mode. And can the game be fun? Definitely. But at the same time, within like 10 to 25 minutes, it can get a little boring and repetitive. So I feel like it kind of takes away the aspect of fun, but not too much. But the game is generally fun speaking. But it's better to play it with friends. It's one of those kinds of games, yes. It's a game that's better to play with friends, because the content that's already there isn't really worth it unless you're actually playing with someone. Then you feel like you're actually having fun. If you're playing alone, you're just there to practice. Just like me. I play the game solo, usually to get practice. And I feel like the game needs a lot more work. And for the final verdict, before I go, it's a 7 out of 10. Or not a 7 out of 10, 5 out of 10. Sorry about that, it's a 5 out of 10. Mainly because, 1, the price of $20, I feel like could have been less than that. It could have been a free-to-play game, honestly. And I feel like that the entire game lacked a good story mode, interesting characters, dialogue for both the story and characters, and combat could have been improved on. Graphics are pretty good though. The game can be fun. There isn't too much content, but what there is, generally speaking, enjoyable. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Final verdict is a 5 out of 10. Also, there is some more of the video, which isn't supposed to be part of the review, but also is. So first, before I continue with the last part I want to mention, here's the screenshot of it, but I'll get back to that later. Basically, in this clip, next clip that you're going to be seeing, there's some gameplay of Call of Duty for background, basically because there's one last part that I feel I need a lot more time to talk about. So yeah, and that last part is the trophy system. In this game there's trophies, which is pretty cool. And yes, final verdict 5 out of 10, which is being generous. To me anyway. Basically, the trophy system in this game is pretty good. There's a good amount of trophies, fairly simple to do. They're not too difficult besides the one for doing a entire horde mode, all 8 or 10 waves, and doing it without purchasing any turrets. If you purchase one turret, you will not get the trophy. If you don't purchase any turrets, no matter what, then you'll be fine, and you'll get the trophy for that. Basically doing horde mode without getting a turret. But then there's the Beacon Graduate Trophy, which said reach rank 10 with any character, which I feel is a bit confusing for a description, because once players reach rank 10 as whichever character, they'll think, oh, that's the trophy. But no, it's not, and they'll see that they don't get the trophy. Instead, it's getting the rank, the player rank, aka the prestige rank of 10. And to do that, you basically have to complete the different rank challenges by like getting whichever character up to level 10, and then like whichever 2 or 3 characters up to level 10. You also have to get like 4 other requirements or like 3 other requirements. Basically defeat a certain amount of enemies, perform a specific amount of team attacks, and whatever. Those are general like types of requirements for ranking up in the rank system, basically the prestige system in RWBY Grimm Eclipse. That's what it is, and it means get prestige or player rank 10 in the game. And the trophy description could have said that, but it didn't. I felt that is a little odd, and I feel that the game was a very poor game. It was terrible. I did not really enjoy it too much, especially for $20. It's not worth it. It could have been free to play, and then I could have been much nicer. I could have been much nicer about it. And there is like specific combos that you can pull off in the game apparently, which I don't think there is, which apparently there is, which I have heard from another review 2 different times. One time when I first viewed the review, and then another time when I viewed it again, like way later on, after like a year or so. And I kept remembering that. I was like, so there's actual combos in the game? Well, if so, I didn't encounter them. And apparently there is, but the guide for it is the user-made guide, or a user-created guide on Steam, apparently. That's what that review said. That's what the guy in that review said in his video review for Grimm Eclipse. He said that there is actual combos, and they are supposed to be like really cool and all that, but the game doesn't tell you how to do them. And basically there's a user-created guide to figure them out. But that guide is on Steam. And so I thought that was really interesting to find that out. So if that is true, I do want to know more about that. But either way, I thought I mentioned that as well. And the problem with that specific trophy, getting the prestige rank of 10 in the game, when the trophy description for the game doesn't even say that. But yeah, final verdict, 5 out of 10. A very terrible game. I don't really recommend it too much. If you're a big fan of RWBY and you don't give a shit, okay, but just know that you're not going to have much content. It gets really repetitive, barely anything interesting in the game in the first like 10 minutes, and then after that it's just repetitive garbage. It's not really worth it, I'd say. And yes, 5 out of 10 because that's being generous. I feel like more people would give it a 3 or 4 out of 10. But I do want to give it light on some of its good aspects, such as the graphics. The characters' personalities do pop, but their dialogue wasn't really too well done. And I feel like their general personality also could have been improved on, but only a little bit. The characters do feel like they're there, but the fact that there's a lack in like different types of multiplayer modes instead of just co-op versus enemies, they could have had a PvP mode where they could have had like a arena brawl type of mode where you could like do a 2v2 or 3v3 type of mode, or just a 1v1 mode. Basically, you versus another player. Local or online co-op would have been cool with that mode, and you would just gone at each other using different types of weapons, or not different types of weapons, but your different like combos and whatnot. And yeah, I feel like this game could have been a lot better. Grimm Eclipse was just a garbage mess waiting to happen. Skills could have been worked out a little bit more. Combat could have been better. The story was piss poor. Wasn't even worth playing. The special character specifically for this game's story, and the story specifically for this game only, those two different things could have been improved on as well. But yeah, this has been WolfDog107 with a verdict for RWBY Grimm Eclipse of 5 out of 10. And that's being generous. WolfDog out.